Okay, imagine this network again. Let's say we have a file. We have one file and we put that file with B, right? Okay, and we call that file 1 or Roman numeric 1, or let's call it something else. Let's call it the star, right? So the name of the file is the star, right? And let's say E wants the star, so B will now send E the star, right? The star gets here. Of course, B will also have a copy of the star. Okay, let's say E changes the star. Now it becomes something else. It becomes an asterisk, right? And let's say the name of this star, right? The name of this star is company accounts, for example, right? And let's say D says, I want the company accounts. Where can I get it, A? And A says, you can get it from either B or E. Now this is a problem, because now D can ask B and get a different copy than if D asks E, right? So this is called data integrity. Right? When or if you have different copies of the supposedly similar document, for example, documents called company accounts, then you do not have data integrity, and you don't want that in a company, right? So it's a very good idea if we can just, if we can just have a way of putting stars somewhere, and if someone wants it and someone wants to edit it, that someone has to access the star at that central location, right? So this is called centralization of data, right? Centralization of data. So we put the star inside a special computer. This computer is now called the server, right? So this is the server, right? So server is where you can keep generic things that everyone might need. For example, a certain file. For example, everyone's emails before it gets distributed. For example, hardware like printers, right? You can connect your printer, for example, to this server. Now, if and when everyone wants to print, you won't have to buy a printer for A, B, C, D, and E. You don't have to buy 5 printers. You just buy one printer. Everyone wants to print, they send it to the server, and it can get printed, right? So it's a very good idea for centralization like that, right? So this particular network, where you have a server and several clients, or in the case of World Wide Web, you have several servers and lots of different clients, is called a client-server network. Right? A client-server network is where you have servers as well as clients, and clients can request for services, from servers, right? And the servers can decide to grant the request or give the request or not, realize the request, right? The server can say no, but chances are the server will say yes, right? So this is a client-server network. So imagine this computer, because it has to do what everyone else asks, it has to be a special computer with special software, right? So it's usually a highly capable computer, and it will have this thing called the network operating system. Okay, NOS, network operating system, not nitrous oxide. Okay, you imagine you going to Facebook or YouTube, right? If you go to Facebook or YouTube, technically speaking, let's say you are E, or maybe you're A, right? Or D, distinction, right? You're D, and you want to access pictures on your Facebook page, right? Photos from your own profile. You don't really have the photos inside your computer, because sometimes it's photos that people tag you, right? So technically speaking, the photos is somewhere else inside a special computer called the Facebook server, FB server, right? Facebook server somewhere inside the World Wide Web, somewhere maybe not even in our country, for example, right? So you want to access your file there. So you make a request to server, right? And you make the request using a client-side software, right? Client-side software. So what is a client-side software? In the case of you using the World Wide Web, your client-side software will be a web browser. It can be Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, anything, right? So these are client-side software. And the client-side software will communicate with the web server in this case because it's a website, Facebook is a website, and the requests for photos, and Facebook server will say, okay, here's your picture, right? In which case the server is actually granting the request. So this network is called the client server network. Other than that, we also have another type of network. It's called the peer-to-peer, right? Peer-to-peer. Basically, in a peer-to-peer network, you don't have to have a server, and hence you don't have to have an NOS. So when this happens, technically speaking, it's really easy. It's really straightforward. You just connect your computer with whoever else is willing to connect with you, right? It's easy to set up. But the disadvantage is that with this peer-to-peer system or peer-to-peer network, chances are once your network gets bigger, it might get slower as well, right? So you have to have a way of overcoming that problem. So sometimes peer-to-peer are used for certain things only. For example, you can use peer-to-peer for what is called um, where you download movies. What's the term again? I can't remember. Right? So you can actually download movies using peer-to-peer, right? Where everyone inside the network, or rather people who are willing to contribute, will say you can download the movie from me. Right? Let's say you're downloading the movie Triple X, not porn. Triple X, the action movie with Vin Diesel, right? And you're downloading Triple X, and A, B, and C have Triple X, and D, which is you, distinction, right, wants to download it. So if A, B, and C says, okay, you can download from me, all three of them say, okay, you can download from me. So instead of downloading Triple X in one chunk, which might be, for example, 2 gigs, you can divide the 2 gigs into 3 parts, from A, B, and C, and download around 700 megabytes each. So the download gets faster. The more people willing to contribute their version of the Triple X, the faster your download will be, right? So this is one way of overcoming the slowness of peer-to-peer. But generally, peer-to-peer will get slower with more computers, right? Slower with more computers, which is not the case for client-server network. Of course, the challenge with client-server network is that you have to have the special computer called a server, and you have to have the network operating system, and it might not be as easy to set up as a P2P, right? So that is the two types of network: client-server and peer-to-peer.